Dan's presentation. So Dan's presentation is going to show us how turkey vultures are essential to the environment and beautiful in their own way. He'll share facts on the natural history of the species, including distinguishing characteristic, related species, and their behavior, including movement patterns, roost sites, and longevity, as revealed by recent tagging studies. And obviously, he's been doing a lot of those tagging studies. So I'll turn it over to Dan, and he can tell us how wonderful these turkey vultures are.
Okay.
Thanks, Dan. Glad to have you with us.
Thanks a lot, Elizabeth. I'll do a little share screen here in just a second. Trying to let me see. Okay, here we go. So well, it's great to be with you, and I enjoyed talking about turkey vultures, and I think you will enjoy this program, which I've given a number of times in recent years. So I'm going to start by giving an overview of my presentation. I'll talk a little bit about Coastal Raptors, the organization, and then I'll go into turkey vulture natural history, and then turkey vulture tracking, a bit of research that has been ongoing since 2012. So first of all, the nonprofit Coastal Raptors was started in 2009, and it's a nonprofit focused on research and education programs leading to, hopefully, to conservation of birds of prey. And the monitoring that I do of raptors on the Washington coast as part of Coastal Raptors actually started in 1995 as I worked for the timber company. I did it weekends and before work some, driving surveys, monitoring the occurrence of raptors on the coast. Then I lost that job in 2009, and at that point I started the nonprofit Coastal Raptors. We have a wonderful website that I encourage you to visit, and we just redid it last year in WordPress, and there's a lot of great information there. There's a homepage, of course, with various information, background information and things, and there's a research page that covers the various forms of research that we've done over the years. Not just the turkey vulture tracking. So for more information on that, you can go there. There's an education page that provides a nice overview of the education work that we do. And then publications, both not only peer-reviewed publications, but newsletters going all the way back to 2010 can be found there. And then I do have a couple more pages you can see there. One is a blog that I post information on, and this is an example of one of the blog posts there. One of our peregrines that lived a long life and was banded and was monitored on and off as it wintered on the Washington coast until age 9, when it was found dead on the Northwest Olympic Peninsula. And I think I suspect it possibly was avian influenza, but I didn't really get the chance to get the carcass to find out for sure. But it was found lying on its back on the beach, and it may have been. But was mentioning before I got the program started, that I've been seeing fewer peregrines this last year or so on the beach, and I think at least in part it could be due to avian influenza, although I think it's primarily due to more bald eagles on the beach, which can harass peregrines and actually serve as predators potentially on peregrines as well. So as I said, it's long-term monitoring of raptors on the coast since 1995 with a nonprofit status. established in 2009. And these beaches are in Southwest Washington. So the habitat that we survey is the ocean out to 100 meters offshore, the beach itself, and then the dunes in those three habitats. And so you could see those three beaches. I live right there, a wonderful spot. I just mentioned I saw a bald eagle fly by. It's getting dark here. The bird was probably going to roost. And I do most of my surveys on this beach here, which I don't think in kilometers, sorry about that. This is about 15 miles long. This is about 7, and this is 25 miles long. Although when I do my science, we have a database that converts it all to kilometers for me. So we do a marking of the birds, not all species, but primarily peregrine falcons, a total of 279 with, I think, 242 of those on the beaches and the rest elsewhere. Some bald eagles and 61 tagged turkey vultures. And so the vultures were not trapped and tagged during these driving surveys. They were trapped and tagged by catching them from a fixed location where we typically use the vehicle as a blind. And so this is one of our banded peregrines. We have a visual identification band typically on the bird's left leg that can be read with a spotting scope or a digital camera with a long lens. And on the right leg, we put a U.S. Geologic Survey band. It's typically silver, but we anodize them red or blue depending on the beach where they were banded. We also put visual identification bands on bald eagles, and we've had several of those recited on southern Vancouver Island over the years. Mostly not, but we've had some interesting recitings of those. And at this point in the program, I urge people to contact the bird banding authorities. In the US, it's the Bird Banding Lab. In Canada, it's the Bird Banding Office, and report their sightings so that they can be recorded by the federal agencies, and then also the banders get notified. So turkey vultures get wing tags. They don't get bands. The Bird Banding Lab and Office won't allow us to put bird leg bands on turkey vultures, and that's because they poop on their legs. And they do that as a way to keep cool, and also their feces is somewhat acidic, and it is known to kill bacteria. And so they won't allow bands because it could get the poop could get caught between the band and the leg, cause chafing and irritation and potentially broken skin and infection. So we wing tag them. Well, turns out wing tags are really a safe way to mark a soaring bird like a turkey vulture. You would never put one on a peregrine falcon like you see to the right here, just because they're like the jet fighters of the bird world, F-15s, and the turkey vulture is like the B-52 bomber. They have different wing structure and different modes of hunting. And so this type of wing tag is never allowed on a bird like a peregrine falcon, and there are many others. So I'll give you a second to look at this. It's a nice little diagram showing the different types of wings in birds. And so the turkey vulture has the passive soaring wings, which can accommodate a wing tag very easily. And the peregrine has the high speed wing. So the tag that we put on is the same type of material and same type of approach as is used to put tags on cattle and sheep to identify them. And so we basically punch a hole through the patagium in the wing, the skin is very thin, and you can see whether there are blood vessels, nerves, or tendons in the area, and you miss that, and wrap the tag around the leading edge of the wing, and off we go. So a little bit about the natural history of turkey vultures, but before we do, I have to share a few funnies, because the turkey vulture, as you know, it's kind of like the Rodney Dangerfield of the bird world. It doesn't get a lot of respect, and there are some pretty good jokes. I don't know if you can. There's one. Let's see. Okay, this thing just locked up on me. I'm not sure why, but this has happened before. I'm gonna have to back out. I can't. I don't know. There we go.
Yeah.
There's another one. So what I love about skunk, it's even better the second day. And this is one of my favorites. I am a turkey vulture. Yes, indeed. My head is bare to prevent rotting flesh from adhering to it. To keep cool, I poop on my legs and feet. My main defense is projectile vomiting. I am so awesome. I must say that I have not experienced projectile vomiting. In my experience with these, when we catch them, they hang their head straight down and they may vomit downward, but never right at me. And I'm not sure how true that projectile part of it is. So to learn more about the turkey vulture and vultures around the world, I highly recommend this 2022 book by Keith Bilstein. He's the retired director of science and conservation at the Hoquiam Center for Conservation Learning at Hawk Mountain Sanctuary. And he just retired a year or two ago. And it's really an excellent book. He spent many, many years studying turkey vultures and many other vulture species in Africa. But the turkey vulture, I gotta love them. I think warts and all. They provide vital ecosystem services. They decrease the spread of disease. They have very acidic stomach acids that kill some of our worst pathogens like anthrax and others. And they are among the very most important recyclers of the environment. And they are beautiful in flight. So the scientific name Cathartes is Cathartes aurea, and Cathartes is based on the Greek word Cathartes, which means purifier, and aura is the Mexican word for turkey vulture. And you might notice this, that when they fly, they're easily distinguished from eagles because they tip their wings up in a dihedral, and they also can have a pattern kind of that you see in this diagram here, where they kind of go low and high, and because of their wing structure, they're able to soar quite close to the ground, and that of course helps them locate food. If you're into real technical science, there's a wonderful paper there on the benefits of soaring, the aerodynamics of and the involved in the soaring that they do. So you might also see them with their wings outstretched like this, which they use to dry off. And pretty common, I'm sure many of you have seen this. And they start out with a black head, and as nestlings, and then as fledglings, and sometime in that first 6 months, the head changes color from black to red. I'm not sure of the exact date, although I've caught less than a year-old bird. First one we caught in our study was Valentine's Day in 2012, and its head was already red. It was less than a year old. So here is that same bird again, along with a bird that's a little older, but not quite adult. Notice the bill there is gray at the tip. And so here is a turkey vulture with a gray tip bill. They're actually an ivory color with some gray in them at age 1. And then by age 2, it's purely ivory. So looking a little closer here at the head, the nostrils go all the way through, which helps prevent food from getting caught there. There's no septum in the middle. You can see they've got some great ear openings. They've got very good hearing, very good vision. Speaking of those nostrils, they have very keen sense of smell. And not all vultures do. Only 3 species, the turkey vulture, there's a couple of yellow-headed vulture species from South America. Other than that, the vultures, the rest of them, including the California condor, does not. Condors tend to often follow turkey vultures to food sources. If you look close at the bill or the tongue, it's got some backward-facing projection there that help guide food to the back of the mouth for during swallowing. Well, here's the range of the turkey vulture in the New World. And the species is the most broadly distributed of all the vulture species. And there are an estimated 13 million turkey vultures globally. And they're a species of least concern, actually. And the second most widely distributed vulture species is the black vulture, which we don't have in this part of the world. I'm not sure of their exact distribution, but they're common in the southeastern US, and they've been moving up into the New England states in recent years. A little bit about turkey vultures and their relatives. They are raptors. And for a number of years, they had been assigned to be in with the storks. But turns out that through looking at their genetics a little more carefully and their anatomy, that they've been reassigned to be within the lineage of the raptorial birds. There's 2 families with 23 species in the vultures, the New World vultures, which are in North and South America, and the Old World vultures from Europe, Asia, and Africa. So this shows the distribution of vultures around the world. And you can see that Africa and Asia are hot spots, as well as South America for vultures, and not so much in North America. We have, the turkey vulture, and as I said, the black vulture in areas as well. So these are the New World species, and they're yellow-headed vultures that also have a strong sense of smell that I mentioned the turkey vulture has. 16 species of Old World vultures, and generally speaking, there have been serious population declines among the Old World vultures. And they, from direct persecution, is one of the causes, shooting and poisoning, veterinary drug poisoning, lead poisoning, and habitat degradation. And they get persecuted because of the mistaken notion that they are spreading a disease to humans and livestock. It's not true, actually. They help contain those outbreaks. Okay, as far as where turkey vultures nest, abandoned buildings, hollows in trees, broken off tops of dead trees, and sometimes on the ground and fallen logs, and just a variety of different settings in small caves. They usually lay 2 eggs. And here's a turkey vulture at 40 to 45 days of age here with the black head. They are obligate scavengers, meaning that they cannot survive unless they scavenge. They depend on carrion. That's not to say that a turkey vulture won't grab a snake or something if it sees an opportunity, but they cannot survive on feeding on live prey. So that is in contrast to facultative scavengers, which are species that scavenge on occasion and maybe fairly regularly, but they don't need scavenging to survive. And so I put out a carcass north of where I live, about 300 meters, and put a game camera out there, and I had one night a possum come in and feeding on it, and some ravens came in as well. And of course, they'll scavenge, but they'll also take live food as well. Here's some turkey vultures at a sea lion carcass. Well, now I'll move into the turkey vulture tracking part of the presentation. And so we started the wing tagging, as I mentioned a while ago, in 2012. We put on 61 so far, and 7 of those birds so far have gotten transmitters as well. The first 4 in 2018, and then 3 last summer, and we got 2 more we're going to put on at the end of April here. So I wanted to mention that Jill Radcliffe from Pacific Northwest Raptors in Duncan is a colleague and collaborator on turkey vulture research, and she put on 2 transmitters a year ago in May, and I went and helped. And both those birds migrated to Mexico for the winter, and one of them wound up nesting. They found the nest in a kind of a rocky cave there within, I don't know, 5-10 miles of where the bird was transmitted. And she's got a grad student that's helping her, Kara Hughes. I think she goes to UVic, and helping her on that project. And so I'm going to now talk about the 4 birds we put transmitters on in 2018, and we have the most complete data, as you might expect from these birds, and not say anything really much at all about the ones from last summer. So the transmitters, that is JF Therian with me there. He's fitting a GPS transmitter for microwave telemetry on that bird. And you can see that vulture doesn't have the typical red head. That's one of the things that happens when they are under stress, is the blood leaves their head and they get very, very pale. And I'm happy to say this bird is alive and well still. And this is the one that Pat Smart photographed. This is Garland. And just spent its 5th winter in Mexico. This is JF Therian in my office with the 4 transmitters before we put them on. And these things cost $4,000 a piece. But they've let us know wherever the birds are. They send a signal to a satellite once an hour around the clock. And for each bird costs about $750 a year. So it's an expensive operation, but we've gotten some wonderful data as a result. You can see those Teflon straps, wrap around the bird, imagine here, the head goes through there. This is around that's a leather called a breastplate. And then there's a couple straps. This doesn't really demonstrate. This breastplate would slide up here and you'd have some loose strap and you put it under each wing and then it gets secured. But anyway, then these are the wing tags for those 4 individuals. And each one was named, and they're all on MoveBank, which is a open source system that was established by the Max Planck Institute for Ornithology in Germany, and it allows the public to, if with a little bit of knowledge, follow these birds. So there are the 4 names. Garland got his or her name. We don't know the gender of these birds, by the way, because it was tagged on the beach right next to Garland, Washington. Airy and Koi were tagged at the Ocean Shores Airport, and we gave them names were appropriate for being around an airport, let's just say. Koi was tagged trapped while using a coyote as a lure, so that's how he got his name. And so this is Artful Dodger with Zoe Greenberg here. And one of our sets, we used slipknot nooses over carcasses to try to trap some of these birds, which is what Hawk Mountain Sanctuary uses. They are our main collaborator on this project. They really lead the project. And JF came out to put the transmitters on those birds, and Zoe was from Hawk Mountain as well. They didn't work for us. We had other methods. I think we used net launcher, which is basically a box with a net tucked inside, and it's propelled forward by firing 3 22 caliber blanks, which set 3 padded projectiles in motion, and they pull forward. And in this case, we trapped 3 of the 4 vultures in this picture. And that sometimes we use a bow net, and this is the capture of Garland here, actually, back in 2018. Baited with a carcass, and we can fire this remotely from 100 meters away. So we've done a lot of some of our trapping. 2 of those 4 birds were trapped at the Ocean Shores Airport, and this is a little bit of a close-up there of the airport. And the land is actually owned by the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the city of Ocean Shores leases the space, and there's a small airport there. It's just a sleepy little airport that gets a couple of fixed wing flights in a day on average, sometimes more, but generally not very few. And when deer get hit by cars out at Ocean Shores, the street department dumps them out on a berm right here, and the vultures hang out here through the spring, summer, and early fall. So it's a great place for vulture trapping. And so John Wagner is the manager of the street department, and he even texts me, and here's an example of one of his texts. and I said, sure, I want it. And it's under the steps in a bag, not very big. So that's as good as it gets when you're looking for carcasses. So this is the track of Erie after he or she was tagged at the Ocean Shores Airport. And this bird sadly went off the air 2 months to the day after the transmitter was put on. And it was on the Quinault Indian Reservation, and took us a week or 2 to get around to getting up and looking for it. Oops, wrong direction. But we went up there, and we were accompanied on the tribal land by a couple of young biologists from their Natural Resources Division, which was the only way we could go on tribal land. And we talked to them, and right alongside the road there, about where that truck is parked, the red one, is where the signal went off the air. There was lots of debris, including elk carcass parts. And so the vultures were attracted to this just beyond my vehicle, which is this Forerunner here. There's a road that comes in from the right, and there was a dead vulture in the ditch there. And the young guys, one of them said, well, they kill vultures around here. And they shoot vultures around here. So we looked at this bird, and it didn't have the wing tag. It didn't have the transmitter. We don't think it was our bird, but we think our bird met a similar fate, and probably the transmitter was thrown in the river, which was right nearby the Quinault River, which was just kind of sad. The other three all have been more active. Artful Dodger went down to Mexico. They all went to Mexico. This yellow line arrow shows the location of Mexico City. And so Artful Dodger hung out about 30 miles northeast of Mexico City. Coy, roughly 50 miles west of Mexico City, and Garland, roughly 70 or 100 miles south of there. And Artful Dodger signal was going awry after its second migration down to Mexico. And so I'll get to that in a minute, but this is Garland's migration north during March of this year. I plotted this. I mean, obviously, it's now we're on the 4th of April, so a little more time's gone by. But I had a little time on the 31st, so I plotted the track, and you can see it's going right up through the valley, Central Valley of California, and headed to British Columbia. And so that migration started on March 18th. And this is his 5th migration. He's averaged 31 days to get to his summer range. This is Coy's migration north for, he got a little later started, 9 days later on March 27th. And in his 5th migration as well, average number of days to his summer area is 22. He moves a little faster. Okay, it locked up again here for a minute. There we go. So this is the area where Artful Dodger then was trapped. And this is kind of backing up a little bit to share a little more about this bird before the signal went off the air. It was trapped at the airport, and we found the bird in a roost right over there, and I'm going to show you some slides of that. It's roughly right in this area right here. I live right here, and this, we got a lot of locations from this stand of alder trees along this is the Little Hoquiam River. And so I put a carcass, some fish carcasses out on this dock right here, and a trail camera, and you can see this bridge. And now in this picture, there is Artful Dodger with his wing tag, and you can kind of maybe see his antenna there, and a truck going over that bridge, and he's feeding on fish with some of his compatriots. This shows the stand, and the dash line shows where the dock is. And this slide shows his migration down there, and this is where he spends his track from north to south. And this one shows where we began to have some odd signals. This is from Google Earth that were not the usual 1 per hour. And we knew something was wrong. And after a while, they got stopped. They stopped altogether. We actually had a biologist from the Veracruz River of Raptors, Kashmir Wolf, and his wife, who lived about 4 hours by drive from there. And they went and found the transmitter and the tag and a few feathers. It was on a cactus farm. That's a cactus farm there. And we suspect the bird was shot, but we're not sure of that. So the Veracruz is a wonderful place to watch the the raptor migration, not just vultures, any other species, as they head on south places like Panama that was mentioned earlier for the winter. So, okay, well, that's the first part. I learned not to put all of the slides in one file because they can lock up. So I have a part 2 here, and we will move on. So this is back to 2018 with the turkey vulture Garland. So we just finished talking about Artful Dodger, and that transmitter lasted about 1.5 years. And Garland, as I mentioned, is still on the air. So we caught Garland on the beach. Do you see this bar when I move it around? I see it. Do you see it? So is it, I'm wondering if you see it the same way I do. Somebody say something. Elizabeth, somebody?
We see.
Ask the question again.
Well, I'm wondering about this bar. I move it around a little bit because that kind of gets in my way. Did you see it down here at the low? And
See
then
a white one, the
Huh?
white arrow down below and a
White
yellow.
arrow below.
Okay, so you don't see this bar that I have that shows the chat and all these other things. Okay, just all right. So the white arrow shows where we trapped the bird, and then this is showing its migration. We trapped it on like June 1st, 2018, up to Vancouver Island. It crossed here at Cape Flattery, and it spent the summer pretty much on Vancouver Island. Went over to the Sunshine Coast for a little bit, came back, and then it crossed over right here. And this is the shortest distance from Vancouver Island to the Olympic Peninsula. And it's a major crossing point for turkey vultures in the fall. As was mentioned earlier, they don't like to fly over water. There's no thermals there. And that point is a point of observation that's used by Rocky Point Bird Observatory, and it's on the Rocky Point military base. And there's literally hundreds of vultures thousands that stage there before they pass through that point. So it was kind of neat to see our bird took that track in this particular year. Okay, now it doesn't want to move again. There we go. So this is the island, of course, and showing Hudson Rocks ecological reserves. One of the places the bird visited when it was up there that first summer was this ecological reserve, where it was seen by Tanya Dubrow, who was out there with her husband kayaking, and it was literally on the rocks out there, and she got this picture of it. And then later it did that migration to the Olympic Peninsula. Then we get to Pat Smart's photograph, her observation. So after that summer of 2018, starting in 2019, and every summer since, Garland has gone to this area for the summer, shown in yellow, which is just south of Whistler and just north of Squamish. And this bird will make forays down to Vancouver during the summer when it's around. It goes back and forth a few times, and then it doesn't, when it migrates south, it doesn't come onto the peninsula. It kind of goes on down this way. And so on one of those forays, it was seen by Pat and photographed in Campbell Valley Regional Park. And this is her photo. And I said, Pat, would you send me a picture of yourself? And she had this wonderful picture of a group of Delta naturalist people out on a field trip. So that's pretty cool. Thanks, Pat. And then just another interesting observation of Garland. A few years later, it was migrating down to Mexico, and it was seen. This is Los Angeles here, and this guy, Keith Condon saw and photographed Garland when he was birding in this park. And it was in a cuddle with 125 turkey vultures and 5 Swainson's hawks. So they typically migrate with other vultures in large flocks, both especially in the fall. Okay. So it's pausing on me again. Oh, okay. So this wonderful map shows all of the movement patterns of all the turkey vultures that have been instrumented by Hawk Mountain Sanctuary Association in collaboration with other groups, with coastal raptors being one of those. There's a total of 81 of these with what, 8 or 9 in California and Washington. So we've contributed to this. So when we got started in 2018, we paid for the first 2 of the 4 transmitters, and Hawk Mountain paid for the other 2. And they had 2 people come out in the field for that. And one person is coming out from Hawk Mountain, David Barber, to help us at the end of April put on 2 more transmitters. And so you can see the birds from Saskatchewan go all the way down here to northern South America. They've transmitted a lot of birds at a cattle feedlot in Arizona that show an interesting pattern. And a bird that they've transmitted in New England, like Pennsylvania, come down, but they don't go any further than southern Florida. So of those 4 birds that we put the transmitters on in 2018, we've had just a few actual sightings of these birds. Airy only went off the air after 2 months, so you wouldn't expect to see much from that bird. Artful Dodger, pretty good sample there. Most of those were by me. I would put a carcass out at the foot of my yard, and the bird would swing by often. And this picture actually is of Artful Dodger flying past my house over Grays Harbor in the summer of 2018. So this is a nice summary of the resightings. I'll let you look at that for a minute. So a few of these birds have been seen a lot. Almost 2/3 of them have been resighted alive at least once. And the average number of resightings per vulture, 5.4. Average among those have been resighted at least once, 9.5. So a wing tag and a turkey vulture, a bird is putting a message in a bottle. And so we meet some interesting people and learn more about the natural history of the birds we're studying. So I'm going to just give 4 examples of patterns we've seen from the wing tag only birds. Starting with AR, there have been 6 resightings since the bird was tagged. So AR, let's see. So this one is not the best slide for this. I'm sorry about that, but AR was actually tagged here on the Garland beach. And that's just one of the resightings there. And this is one of the other birds I'm going to talk about, AK, and this is the 3rd one I'm going to talk about. So a little more about AR. AR was seen then on September 20, 2019, at this point at which the birds stage before they cross, just as Garland was. So here's Garland again at that point. He was with more than 200 vultures that day, seen by Joaquin Bertrand, who was out there birding, and this is one of his pictures. and that's the migration route again on 2018. AR was seen by Terry Bird just this last September, soaring literally over his house. He lives within a few miles of the staging area, and he saw this guy fly over and sent me this wonderful photo. So moving on to AK, there have been 37 resightings of that bird from between 2013 and 2022. And the description of my talk indicated I was going to be sharing some information about longevity. I didn't get a chance to compile that, but this bird was trapped, all these years ago at either age 1 or 2. I'm not sure. So many of these birds now are reaching 10, 12 years old. They don't even start breeding until they're age 6. So they're long-lived birds. So turkey vulture AK, these are, this bird was tagged. This is Cape Meares, and this is roughly 1.5 miles north of there. And these are all the resightings of this bird around Cape Meares. And there, some of these points are, there's more than one point. There's sometimes when a bird, the computer, when the location is in the exact same spot, they'll just put the points right on top of each other. So these 37 sightings over all these years, this bird is showing a great deal of fidelity to this summer area. And then this one, EP, which is, there have been 17 resightings of this bird in the winters of 2019, 2020, and 2020, 2021. And this bird is wintering not in Mexico, but in a park in Sacramento, California. It's called William Land Park. It's roosting. It's not really spending all its time, but it's a winter roost. Birds come in here to spend the night in the park, and there a few. This is what. So this park's pretty good size here. This is Sacramento River, Sacramento, California, and this is not the only place it roosted in the park, but there were 3 or 4 select places, and I just put all of the points right there at this point for simplicity's sake. And this one was seen by Dan Erola, who was doing a survey work of vultures in the park. So, and he was duplicating surveys that he did 10 years earlier over this period of time, and saw our bird here. And so this is a little bit of data from his paper that he published from first 10-year period. And so you have number of vultures on the y-axis and the months and years on the x. So September, October, November, December, January, February, and on we go here. And you can see where the vulture numbers peaked: October, September, October, November. But so this is very valuable information. Just happened to be that he was going to go back to this park and do another couple of years of surveys, and he was able to see our bird. And then on November 25th of 2022, long after Dan stopped his surveys, on my birthday, no less, this bird was resighted about 0.5 kilometer. There's some metric for you, southeast of the William Land Park. And that was by Brent Angelo. And he was in Portland and flew down to Sacramento to spend the Thanksgiving with his parents, and he loves to take pictures. He happened to be out in the front yard and he saw this vulture fly over. He had his camera with telephoto lens, and he got this picture, and then this one which he was able to enlarge and through some cropping, identify it as EP. So, and I think I sent him the link. He may be listening tonight. The last but not least, turkey vulture AP was trapped and wing tagged right here. This is where I live, and we did some trapping in my neighbor's yard, some vultures and an eagle and a few ravens, and so this one was tagged right here. And in 2014, we trapped 3 vultures at once, and you can see they look pretty sad there. They actually get quite lethargic, and they're known for that. They kind of play possum when they're when they're under stress. And as I said earlier, the blood rushes to their heads. So anyway, the bird was wing tagged in 2014, and then it was recited in June of 2016 on a backwater of the Columbia River by Tony Starlight, the first 6 recitings I symbolized by, well, you can imagine what that is. But Tony lived in a house here on this backwater, and he looked up and he saw this vulture fly over, and with a naked eye, he was able to identify it as this particular individual, read the wing tag, and so as AP. And I got this report from the bird banding lab, as I often do. He submitted his first sighting to the bird banding lab. I made myself a note. It was in Wayman's yard. They actually give vultures a band number so they can track them in the system. They call them air bands. They're not technically bird bands, but they're not able to track them just with the alphanumeric codes that we put on the wing tags. Anyway, so I got this Tony Starlight. I thought, well, that's an interesting name. So I always contact the observers and ask for more information. And just like Pat was, he was very accommodating and shared lots of information with me. He got the certificate well, and he was really good with the camera also. And here you can see one of his photos, and here's another one. And so another one, the bird was often seen with other vultures. It's that same field, and he saw as many as 8 up to 20 vultures in this field. So this field is where he made most of his observations. At times a year it floods, and he saw them feeding on a fish that had gotten stranded in there. And then later, maybe in the same year or another one, they grow grass in there and hay it. And once that happens, the small mammals are killed, and the vultures go into those kinds of fields and feed on the small mammals that die as a result. So I got to know Tony. It turns out at the time, he's moved since the pandemic. He's moved to Charleston, North Carolina, but he was an entertainer full-time in Portland. He still comes back and gives shows in Portland. So I went to a show there, and it was a lot of fun. And it's a dinner theater, and here he is doing his Neil Diamond. We went to his Neil Diamond Hot August Night program. And he also got a certificate. And the night I was there, the first time, I've seen 2 or 3 of his shows, he actually, showed some pictures of his wing tagged vultures, the same one that I shared with you, and talked about his banding certificate, his certificate from the bird banding lab, and it was a lot of fun. And so he has actually been out on the beach 4 or 5 times over the years, and we've gotten to be friends. And we've actually done a couple of we've done a bird festival together. And we did one in Ridgefield, Washington in 2017, where the bird of honor was the turkey vulture. And so we actually did a parody of Band on the Run by Paul McCartney, Band on the Bird, which I'm going to play for you very shortly. And we were on the beach when this was filmed, actually recorded. And so I'm going to play this for you right now. And that'll be the last thing. It's starting to get kind of late here, but this is my friend and Raptor buddy, Tony Starlight. He's got a special song that's Band on the Bird. Take it away, Tony.
Where the birds exploded with a mighty flash as they flew up from the sun. And the first one said to the second one there, did you see that band? Band on the bird. Band on the bird. Raptor Dan and the singer man are teaching everyone. See the band on the bird. Band on the bird. Band on the bird. Band on the bird. We drove up closer and the flock dispersed as the camera started to click. We scanned the flock looking for the band so that we could take a pic. Band on the bird. Band on the bird. See the band, no plan. It's good for everyone. See the band on the bird. Band on the bird. Band on the bird. Band on the bird. Well, we took our pictures and we made them big to see what we could find. We got the numbers and we passed them on to the birding band online. Band on the bird. Band on the bird. See the band, know the plan. We'll search forevermore. Oh, band on the bird. 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 Band on the bird.
okay, well, that's it. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank
I
you
have
so
a
much.
question.
Okay,
That was really interesting, Dan.
thanks.
Obviously, I think we know a lot more about turkey vultures than we did before the presentation.
Well, good.
And we love the band on the bird. That's great. That didn't come across all that well on this, but I had watched it when you sent it out initially. And it was better quality for some reason. I don't know why this didn't come through so well tonight, but it was still really fun.
Okay, I'll just jump in briefly and say, if you go to the Coastal Raptors website, it's on the homepage there, coastalraptors.com. And you can also Google it and find it on YouTube.
Yeah, because I have seen it and it was much better quality. So I don't know why this didn't work so well on here. And I was going to ask you a question, but obviously you don't have the answers about longevity because I have really had no idea how long these birds lived. And I guess you have a vague idea, but not a really accurate one.
Well, I've got some really good data, and I'm kind of a one-man show here, you know, with Coastal Raptors. I do have a database consultant, and that she's the only paid person. But what I was going to say is, I had intended to get. I've got some data we're putting together. I mean, we've had some of these birds tagged for a decade, and so many of these birds are at least 10. And we're still reciting them, but I haven't been able to I got sidetracked on another project, and I wanted to have that to share, but these transmitters last a long time, as you know, if the birds last, and so there's a lot of good information out there as a result from all these birds over the years. So it's going to be a well-known fact as time goes on and more information gets published and shared here and there. But
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what, oh, sorry, Paul has a question, and I see there are a couple of things here on chat. I'll do those first, and then I'll get to Paul, okay? Anne Murray's just a comment, very interesting presentation. Thanks, Dan. Audrey's asking, what do you call a number of vultures? A murder of crows? What is a group of vultures called? And I don't know.
Somebody Google it for us. See what
you don't know what they call it?
No.
No. Oh, okay, we'll have to check that one out. It's a very good question, actually, because I never really thought about it.
It's a committee.
Oh, is that what you found?
Yeah, that's what they say on the web, that it's the committee.
Committee. Okay.
Oh, that's kind of funny. Well,
yeah.
Well, they sort of look like a committee, don't they, when they're all huddled round a carcass?
yeah, that's a great thing.
Like being around the board table.
And Karen had a comment, a great show. She said, who knew turkey vultures stressed out so much? They went from redhead to white as a ghost, or pooped on their feet to keep cool. But I knew about the pooping, but I didn't know anything about the head turning white. Paul, you had a question?
Yeah, I would just more of a basic biology question. I mean, vultures are quite interesting in that they can consume things that would probably kill any other animal because of the bacteria and everything else.
Yeah.
Do vultures have a special digestive system different than other birds?
Well, it's what I can tell you, it's due to the chemical nature of their digestive juices, highly acidic, and that's what's doing it. They're also very interestingly more tolerant of lead than California condors, so they're a good surrogate. Level of 1 part per million in the blood of a condor will probably kill it. And we caught several vultures with levels that turkey vultures, and you couldn't tell that they were, they were not ill even from it. It's a well-known fact on people in the field that, and no one knows why, but that's a lucky thing.
I see a few more comments.
You enjoyed your.
Audrey's asking, when you were on the First Nations land and were told that they shoot them, did you talk about how valuable they are?
To those people, I shared this same program with a local Audubon chapter, and someone from the chapter followed up with me later. In fact, it was a woman that I coordinated with me to give the talk. And she said, why don't you go to the nation and give a PowerPoint? And I think I will. I have not done that, and I need to do that and offer to do that. So sadly, the kind of people that do that aren't likely to go to my talk, but we can at least hopefully get to the young people,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Young people might communicate to their parents and so forth, so it might work.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, it's a possibility too, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I see Annie's got another comment here. She said, when you see a group feeding, you're in the presence of a wake of vultures. When they're resting in a tree or on the ground, they're called a committee. And while they're feeding, they're known as a wake. And
Wow.
Brian Avent saying, when they're flying, it's a kettle of vultures.
Oh,
When
yeah.
sitting, it's a committee. When feeding, it's a wake.
I'm going to have to add that to my talk.
And I guess that calling it a wake when they're feeding is probably pretty good, considering they're feeding on carrion.
Yeah.
That's quite clever.
Well, you know what a group of crows is called, don't you?
A murder.
Yeah, murder. So we have a wake and a murder now.
Murder, yes. Now, David, do you have any questions from people in the church?
Anybody? Pat, you have a question?
I know that the vultures that you put the transmitters on in 2018 were solar GPS.
Mhm.
And now you've moved over to something that's tracked by cell phones, is that right?
Yeah, cell phone towers. Yeah, I didn't go into the last summer's work at all. Probably should have. Yeah, there's a modern technology now that sends signals to cell phone towers. It's still a GPS location. Is solar powered with a GPS inside, and but they send the signals to the cell phone towers, and when they're out of range, the data is just on hold, and once they come into range of a cell phone tower, that data can be downloaded again. Those transmitters only cost about $1,300, which is far less than the 4,000. And there is information on Pat's. Looks like she read turkey vulture tracking on the website about those 3 birds that we put transmitters on last summer. One of them did migrate to Mexico. One of them, we learned, a shedded transmitter. We thought it suddenly died, but was seen it was seen flying around after we knew the transmitter was emitting from a separate location. And the third one died, and not quite sure, 8 or 10 days after the transmitter was put on. Not really sure what happened there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I see Annie has put a website here, so you could look up what a group of vultures was called, and it's birdfact.com/articles/ what is a group of vultures called?
Okay, birdfacts.com.
birdfact.com/articles/ and then it's what dash is dash a dash group dash of dash vultures dash called.
Okay.
There must be a dozen other names for them too. It's really quite an
good Lord.
interesting, good, it's an interesting site.
Sounds like it. Okay, so any more questions from the church there?
I think not at the moment.
It may be too early to tell, but do you think that climate change is changing the migration patterns at all?
I
Why are vultures ending up in Sacramento instead of Mexico?
well, I think that's probably been going on for decades there. I'm not aware of that. The turkey vultures are quite adaptable. And I think the climate change is gonna continue expanding their range northward, like is the case in many birds. And that has been a trend over the years for not just turkey vultures, but black vultures. But I think they're such an adaptable species that I think they'll be okay there. But I think about one of the birds that I study to some extent, the gyrfalcon, which is a bird of the Arctic. And one of the big concerns there with regard to climate change is the expanding northward of pathogens that there'd be novel pathogens that they would not have antibodies to that could potentially affect at the population level. So, and there's a lot of big problems with issues centered around bird migration and climate change. Don't get me wrong on that. And by the way, there's a wonderful book on that, on bird migration. It's called The World on the Wing. If you haven't read it, it's just fantastic. It's a New York Times bestseller by Scott Weidensaul, and he goes into subjects like that topic. And Yeah, I wanted to tell you about another book here that I meant to scan the cover of and share with you. Maybe some of you have seen it. It's called Old Man and the Vultures.
Oh,
And it's by Dave Manning. And you can probably get it online. And he lives in on one of the Gulf Islands, and he tells the story of just watching vultures in his area there on the island, and finding a vulture nest and tracking it from eggs all the way to fledging. And it's really well done. He's got wonderful photos in here, just wonderful photos. And so that's one I would recommend to you if you're interested in subject as well. Old Man and the Vultures. And, Old Man and the Vultures.
yeah, it's something maybe we could put in our reading nook
Yeah,
area of the newsletter.
yeah, I think you should. It's a fun one. Keith's book on the vultures of the world is really excellent. It's a little dry, but if you want to learn about vultures, it's from one north to south. That's east to west. That's the book for you.
I actually watch a program which is now being shown in repeats, and some of them are quite old, called Hope for Wildlife. And this is from Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
And I remember a number of years ago that they had a program where they had turkey vultures that they found in the winter. And they'd obviously, something had gone wrong, and they'd ended up there in the winter. And this turkey vulture had frostbitten talons.
Talons, frostbitten. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they were able to save the bird, but and release it when it was warmer. But I think it had just gotten blown off course or something, because I mean, Nova Scotia is far north for them to be in the first place.
Yeah.
And certainly not a good place for it to be in the winter.
That's for sure. That's for sure. We do have a few that winter here. Some of them winter on Vancouver Island as well. But sometimes we have some cold snaps, and it's not just the toes, but that bare head. Yeah. And then if their carcasses freeze up for any period of time, they're in trouble too.